Yeah. All right, guys, welcome to episode 3 of the Split Decision podcast. It's me, Fitz, joined by just Jeremy today, and we're excited to break down another weekend of big fights. Where do you want to start
Yeah.
off? I think the biggest fight this weekend was definitely Lomachenko versus Haney, not just biggest in terms of the magnitude of the fight, but also, the controversy after and the news and the media circulating.
Yeah, I mean, ever since this fight got announced, like every boxing fan in the world, got jitters and was super excited for this, and it did not disappoint. This is a super technical, exciting fight. I mean, just to kick it off, this might be controversial. There's a lot of rounds, a lot of swing rounds, but I honestly scoring it live, I was a little drunk, so it might not be the best scoring ever, but I scored at 115, 113 Haney.
Yeah, I had
How about you,
Haney winning
Fitz?
as well. But I also was pretty heavy on Haney, and I was nervous when they read the decision. I was shocked it wasn't a split decision. The one judge that gave it a 116, 112 and gave the 10th round to Haney is insane.
Yeah.
I have no idea how that's even possible, but I think you said what you said was very valid that this was a great fight. It lived up to the hype. Not it almost superseded like the hype in terms of the type of fight it was. This was a pretty, dog fight. They were both digging deep, both landing big shots. It was competitive. It was so close, and that just gets overshadowed by the controversy and most of the fans thinking that Lomachenko deserved to walk out as the undisputed champ, which I necessarily don't agree with. I thought it was a close fight, and I think it shouldn't be understated that close fights go to the champion. Draws, the champions retain. To be the champ, you got to beat the champ. In close decisions, the champ has the favor, and Devin Haney was the champ going in. Lomachenko was the challenger, so I think that should be at least part of the narrative because you can't
Yeah.
say it wasn't a close fight.
No, I honestly agree with that 100%. Either way, like I was listening to the decision being read out. Either way it went to Haney or Loma, I think it would have been fine. I don't think that this was a super close fight. People calling it a robbery. I do not think it was a robbery. Loma did outland Haney in basically like every single category, outperform in every single category, but you score it round by round. You don't score it as a fight as a whole. Um, those many close rounds, man. Haney, I think the first 4 rounds were split. That's how I scored it. And then Haney kind of took the middle of the fight. And then Loma came on towards the end. As you said, that judge giving Loma or giving Haney the 10th round is just blasphemous. That was easily Loma's best round.
I couldn't
That
believe
Loma
that when
was,
I looked at the round by
yeah,
round scoring.
Yeah. Loma was pushing, snapping Haney's head back with those punches. And Loma's obviously amazing. He did kind of surprise me in this fight. Right off the bat, we've seen Loma start slow. Loma started very slow against Teofimo Lopez. He didn't start picking up the pace, didn't start really fighting until like the 7th round. And in this fight, he was fighting right off the bat, which is what exactly like we wanted to see from Loma. Um, in the early rounds, he was able to close the distance and get punches off inside, which I thought was very impressive. Um, Haney did a great job, man. Haney's super technical. Those body shots were nice. The announcers, when Haney was landing those body shots, they were nice shots and they were landing, but the announcers were like giving a lot of credit to his body shots, saying that they were landing a lot heavier and a lot more often than I thought they were. Um, so that's one thing to keep an eye out. That I kind of disagree with the commentators. It was a super close round, super close fight. There were many swing rounds. Like round 5, I wrote it down. My notes was super close. Like I honestly, I scored this fight live, and then I went back and watched it a second time, and I honestly gave up on scoring it because I could just
There are a
not
couple
tell on
rounds too
so many
close to
rounds.
call. Yeah,
Yeah, with a fight with so many swing rounds, again, like I don't think you can call it a robbery.
yeah, I agree. And such a close fight. Close fights aren't robberies. Robberies are when someone who clearly shouldn't have won the fight won the fight. This fight was a coin flip going to the decision. I think most people can agree on that. I agree that the body work of Haney was really impressive. I did notice commentators talking about it a lot, but I felt like it was really landing that right hook heavy to the body. Of course, like you said, two of the highest IQ fighters going into the game. They both had adjustments. And you see Haney struggle was going into the later rounds, maybe like the ninth. He kind of just asked his corner, like, what do I do? Like, how do I solve the puzzle? He didn't really have many answers, but he still went out there, showed his heart. I think Haney looked fresher going into the later rounds. And I think it's really understated that Haney went out there and won the 12th round, a
Yeah.
round he probably needed to. He did need to win, otherwise it would have been a draw, which he still would have retained. But it's not a win. He doesn't have the perfect record anymore. If he loses that 12th after he lost the 10th and 11th decisively, the momentum of the fight completely switched. Lomachenko was a minus 600 favorite. Haney was plus 450 going into the 12th round. And he went out there and won the 12th round and won the fight. Lomachenko definitely landed the heavier headshots, definitely probably had Haney more stunned after the fight in moments of the fight. But if you look at Lomachenko's face, he had a lot of damage on his face too. Haney was really successful with the jab and overall just did damage and remains undefeated 30-0, which is very impressive.
Yeah. I mean, another talking point that was going into this fight was Haney's how much bigger he is than Loma and the 5 inch reach advantage and how Loma would do against that size differential. Loma is not like really a natural 135er. His natural weight class is probably like 2 weight classes down, but nobody would find him in that division. Nobody would fight him in the next division up. So he had to go to lightweight and he had to move up. And that shove at the weigh-ins at the face-off, when Haney shoved Loma, you kind of got to see Loma not fight back against that, but prove that he wasn't the weaker guy. He was like there were times when they'd tie up and Loma would like throw Haney
Yeah, he tossed him
across
a
the
couple
ring.
of times. Like one
Yeah,
time really
yeah,
bad, a couple times. So
yeah. And I like to see that from Loma. I mean, he's just showing his physicality. He's not scared of anybody. In this fight, both of them impressed me. I felt bad for Loma, to be honest, that both fighters deserve to win. Whoever got the decision, I think, would have been the rightful winner, to be honest. They both could have won. But I did feel bad for Loma. I mean, you saw him crying afterwards in his locker room. So
yeah, it was very
pretty sad.
emotional after the fight, which sucks to see. A fighter, because he was speaking about how his children, he promised his children he would come home and
Yeah.
still. So that's hard to watch. But at the end of the day, he should hold his head high. I mean, at his age, to go out there and fight with one of the pound for pound best fighters in the world is incredible. One last note I
Yeah.
wanted to make on the fight, or one of the final notes. I thought the referee, Harvey Dock, did a very good job managing the clinch. He let him fight. He wasn't ruining the flow of the fight. He was keeping him active. And after the travesty we seen last week with the refereeing, I mean, clearly it's not an easy job, apparently. So shout out to him. I thought it was just a really good fight all around until the controversy at the end.
Yeah. And one last thing about Haney that impressed me is you see Loma a lot of times he'll grapple, he'll tie up with these guys, and then like he'll like try to pull out. He'll like make his arms go straight and he'll pull out, and then he'll land some stuff inside. And we've seen him knock people down with that. I can't exactly put an exact fight on that, but I've seen it before and people know what I'm talking about. Um, and Haney defended against that very well. Whenever Loma would try to like put his arm straight and pull out, Haney would pull him closer and not let him do that. So it was an all around, great chess match.
And what'd you think of Shakur getting in the ring after the fight and calling pretty much for a
Oh,
fight with Haney? I mean, that was bold, but a lot of people view Shakur as the best right now, and that's such a there's so many big fights that could happen between the top three guys and Tank, Haney, and Shakur right now. Like the future is really bright. I mean, I think down the line, eventually Shakur versus Tank will really be the big fight, probably. Like who goes? Those are two guys who really could be the face of boxing,
yeah.
and are in contention to be the face of boxing right now. Really, I mean, those are two of the biggest stars by far right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, Shakur, if you know Shakur Stevenson, Gervonta Davis, Devin Haney, like all those guys are amazing, and I'm just salivating thinking about any of those guys fighting each other. Shakur Stevenson got in the ring. I like to see that. Obviously, that was fun. Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, by the way, old friends. They were boys back in the day. So
Really? I mean, that's East Coast
yeah,
versus
this
West Coast.
they have a couple pictures together. Um, Shakur Stevenson's super technical, man. I don't know who to win that between him and even him and I don't know who to win any of those fights between
Yeah,
those
it's
three, to be
crazy.
honest.
I just hope they all happen. And by the looks of it, it looks like, boxing definitely wants to put the fights on, and it looks like the fighters want that too. So we're finally starting to see these top guys fight each other in their prime, not 5 years past their prime. Obviously, it's not happening in all cases, like Usyk and Fury, Crawford and Spence, but at least in these lighter weight classes, you can. Shakur wouldn't get in the ring if he was dodging the fight. I mean, he's in the ring after the pay-per-view. That's the fight to make. I mean, you don't bring someone in the ring unless that's who they're fighting next. So I think that's the fight that has to happen. Haney versus Shakur.
Yeah. I mean, ever Ryan Garcia versus Tank and then Loma versus Haney, the lightweight division is just moving.
On
We love to see
fire.
these
Yeah.
big fight. Yeah, we love to see these big fights getting made. It's great for boxing. For Loma, is this the end of the road?
I mean, it's definitely not in terms of his ability. Clearly, he proved that. I just don't know how much Loma has left to prove. I mean, I don't think he has anything left to prove. He's solidified himself as a legend. But I'm sure I'd love for him to see a few more fights and hopefully soon before he kind of starts to decline with age, because eventually it will catch up to him like it does everyone. But
Yeah,
what about? I mean, what if he goes in there and fights Tank Davis? That's a
that'd be an
crazy
amazing
fight.
fight.
It's a
Yeah,
crazy
I mean,
fight.
Loma always talked about how being the unified, four belt champion was his dream. And he didn't quite reach that Saturday night. So would I like to see him back? Yeah. Do I ever think he'll fight for another four belt championship? I doubt it, to be honest. Yeah.
Definitely one of the greats ever. Loma, such a crazy style, footwork like we might never see again, technique, everything. The angles he cuts,
Oh
groundbreaking.
yeah.
Like a fighter that we'll see down the line. These kids coming up now, he's gonna be studied, and these kids are the next generation is really gonna take after guys like Lomachenko. They're trendsetters
For sure.
and trailblazers. But yeah, anything else you wanted to talk about for the boxing fight? I think that pretty much covered it on my end. Overall, great event. Tom Brake, credit to them. They put on a great fight.
Yeah, I mean, nothing much more to say. This was a great fight for boxing, a great performance by those two fighters, and hats off to both of them.
Yeah, so let's jump right into the UFC card. I mean, this first fight on the card actually has a really interesting story. On our breakdown, we kind of just passed by this fight, didn't really break it down too much because neither of these guys are really, as of right now at least, making too many waves in the welterweight division. But we saw Thembo Garimbo go out there and have a dominant win in which he showed off impressive grappling, which he's known as a jiu-jitsu guy, against Takashi Sato, a UFC vet, and he even dropped him with a heavy overhand right. So you see his overall game is improving, and I think that's important to note. He's moved from Africa over to MMA Masters. The story's kind of gone viral, but before this fight, he only had $7 in his bank account. He was living on the mat floor, then eventually got moved into a room in the gym. But you see, kind of the situation for some of these guys in the UFC, nothing to their name, they're fighting for everything. And it would have taken a lot to get this guy out of there last night. So great performance by him and a big win for his career. It's sad to to see the story, see him talking to the presser how after he lost his UFC debut, a lot of his family and friends kind of cut him off, stopped believing in him, stopped sending him over money to help. But he bought into himself. He had some great training partners in his gym, like bad guy Colby Covington, who was bringing him packed sandwiches for lunch. And overall, just a really feel good story to come out of this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see, like, it's amazing to see the sacrifices a lot of these fighters make for their dreams and for the sport of mixed martial arts. They're really the fighters that, hold this sport up and make the sport the great that it is. Um, and an African fighter, and I love to see the African guys making the UFC and winning because there's so much untapped potential down there. Um, so good win by Garimbo.
Yeah, I mean, all the untapped potential is going to be going to Francis Ngannou's PFL Africa.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
UFC better move quick. And the next fight on the card, moving on, was another good one. Round one knockout. It was Natalia Silva. She was the biggest favorite coming into the card. I told you guys, look out for this girl. She's gonna be something in this division. She's a ferocious striker, and she finishes Victoria Leonardo in round one, and she finished her brutally, man. I mean, if you go and look up the cut Leonardo had on her lip, it was nasty. And you don't often see girls dealing out damage like Natalia Silva does. She's a super exciting fighter to watch in the women's side of things, and I'm really excited to see where her UFC career goes from here. And it's definitely going to be a step up in competition, I hope.
She had three times the significant strikes of her opponent, so that was impressive.
Yeah, that's crazy. And the next fight on the card, we saw Chase Hooper, really a fan favorite type fighter, move up in weight class. This was his debut at 155, and this was one of the better performances of his career. He didn't get a finish, but a pretty decisive win over Nick Fiore, who might be gone after this. He drops to 0-2 in the UFC. But Chase Hooper just taking advantage of his jiu-jitsu ability, his funky style. He's really difficult to deal with on the ground, his length and everything, and his skill, above all, of course, make him really hard to deal with on the ground. He gets you in these awkward positions where he kind of just wraps his body around you in weird ways and inability immobilizes you. He is a good fighter, and he's still such a young kid. He's really going to round out once he starts to develop his striking game even more, and he'll be somebody in the UFC for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I totally ate my words last podcast, and I think I called him
Scrawny.
fragile or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, scrawny. He came out super aggressive every single round. Came out was he was right in Nick Fiore's face. He was shooting takedowns and on the ground, off his back. He was throwing up submissions all the time. He's got great grappling. That's not the question with Chase Hooper. The question is, I guess, his striking. And his striking didn't look bad. He ducked those hand shots. But he came out aggressive. He has nice elbows inside. Obviously hard fighter to deal with. He's got great chin. So this was a great win for Chase Hooper and impressed me.
Yeah, definitely. The next fight on the card was a great one, sloppy, kind of low level heavyweight fight, but it was a split decision. So thanks for the shout out to the podcast there.
Yep.
But Rodrigo Nascimento got the nod. I was on Nascimento, so I was happy about that, but kind of zoned out for most of this fight. Latifi got some takedowns, didn't do much with it. And then Nascimento kind of just showed his development as a fighter, originally a grappler, but since training at ATT has developed a more well-rounded game and just did more damage on the feet, did good work with the leg kicks, with the jab, and outpointed Latifi.
Yeah, I mean, Alil Latifi, 40 years old. Um,
Yeah, definitely. Um, Yeah, I was a little biased, because I did have the money on the fight, so my scoring was probably a little biased, but I definitely see how you could score it for Latifi, and definitely a tough performance from him, after he said he was gonna retire in his previous fight. So who
Yeah.
knows how hard he was even training, but Latifi's always kind of gonna go out there. Sort of fight, he's taken down like his last seven opponents two times or more, or something like that. So just it's the type of fighter you know what you're gonna get when he goes out there. And moving up on the card, a really impressive performance I felt from Gilbert Urbina, excuse me, who comes off almost a 2-year layoff from the Ultimate Fighter. He had lost 2 fights in a row on the Ultimate Fighter, which you don't normally see. Normally, one fight and that's it. But injury in the finale got him chance to win it, and he was going out there and he was beating Brian Battle, who we've seen have a lot of success in the UFC. And Urbina was beating him the first round, but then got finished. And we see him came back. He looked in phenomenal shape. He looked a lot bigger than I remembered him, a lot more muscular, and he dominated Orion Kosuke, who just continues to struggle in the UFC now, 1-2. And so I'm excited to see what Urbina can do. Hopefully he's really looked like he's developed into a pretty legit fighter. This was a good win. He
Yeah.
TKO'd him, another knockout.
Yeah. This was Ryan Kosie's welterweight debut, and this is Gilbert Urbina's return to welterweight. That Brian Battle fight was at middleweight. And Gilbert Urbina just looked faster.
Yeah.
The whole time his striking was better. Gilbert Urbina uses all his weapons very well. He even shot for a takedown and had some great ground and pound, threatened that arm triangle submission. Seems like in the second round, Ryan Kosi had a problem with his rib or something. He was in the corner talking to his coaches about his rib, and then Urbina recognized that and finishes him with a body kick. This is a great win by Urbina. Just a domination, better fighter the whole way through in every single aspect.
Yeah, and especially in the wrestling aspect is impressive because the Kosuke brothers are good wrestlers. So for him to go out there secure a takedown is not an easy thing. And he's definitely going to be a problem for some guys in this division. Yeah, I think the fact that he moved down in welterweight, definitely the right move. I think he definitely looked big in there. He looked strong. He kept his speed, like you said, looked fast, sharp, and very well rounded. This is a guy who has brothers who fought on the Ultimate Fighters, so we've got to think he's constantly training. Being surrounded by family members that compete in MMA is always a plus. And a great win. So we'll see what's next for him. And the next fight on the card was a really nice showing from Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Really fast striking, really effective striking. Took out Vanessa Vanopoulos, made it look really easy. As soon as this fight started, you kind of knew these girls were just kind of not on the same level. I mean, we're really seeing Carolina start to rekindle that old self she had when she got the title fight against Joanna. We saw her struggle a lot after that fight, but this is now 3 wins in a row for Carolina. And this was probably she got a finish in her last fight, but this was definitely a better step up in competition. And I'd say this is the most impressive run of this second career revival for Carolina. She looked great. The striking looked great, and it was damaging. She was landing a lot of heavy strikes on Vanessa.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, she struggled for a while. She lost 5 straight. And then these 3 wins back have been great. Especially this performance against Vanessa Demopoulos. This was impressive. I liked how she looked the whole way through. Can she make another run? I mean, possibly. She's looked very good as of recently. So exciting to see if Carolina, you always got when fighters start losing so much, losing 5 in a row, and then they start to bounce back, don't give up hope. So good performance. I was impressed.
Yeah, great performance. I don't think she has what it takes, at the top of the division. Even like someone like Mackenzie Dern, would probably go out there and dominate her at this stage in their career. But she's definitely, no easy fight. She's not gonna go out there and give any of these girls an easy fight. And if you're not up to par on the feet and you can't take her down, you're probably gonna lose.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so the last fight on the prelims, Slava Claus gets back to his winning ways. We finally get to see him in there against another striker, and he goes off and shows, why he should be fighting strikers. Vicious TKO. We got a lot of knockouts on these prelims. Great prelims overall, and we see the level of Slava Claus striking when he gets matched up against another striker. He goes and finishes the job. So a nice win after, two tough fights against the grapplers in his previous two.
This fight was between two standout strikers, and Slaviklaus did not disappoint. I noticed during the fight that he he does not telegraph his shots at all. They just kind of come out of nowhere, and they were catching Mahashate, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, he was catching them, and Slaviklaus's left eye was bothering him. I forget quite what it was, but he was blinking a lot. Seems like he had trouble seeing out of his lead eye, and he still got the finish. I mean, that was a brutal finish. So Slavikov looked very good. That he had some great moments in this fight. Yeah, that massive right hand at the end of round one that dropped the Chinese fighter, and then that brutal left hook, right hook finish.
Boom, boom.
Yeah, boom, boom.
Talk about beautiful finishes. Main card opener, Carlos Diego Ferreira puts Michael Johnson out, stone cold haymaker. That's about as hard as you can punch someone. This is not the first time Michael Johnson has been hit with a haymaker like that, believe it or not. Josh Emmett knocked him out in the same exact way, sent him flying back on his fucking ass the same way. I mean, almost like deja vu, I guess. Something about Michael Johnson, he doesn't see that big haymaker, but just a really brutal way to get put to sleep like that.
Yeah, I
And there
mean,
was no need for that follow-up shot from Carlos Diego
no,
Ferreira. I mean, that's, come on, unnecessary. Johnson was out.
he was out cold. I mean, that was a huge shot by Diego Ferreira. Michael Johnson was stiff down there, but early in the fight, like in the first round, Michael Johnson was getting the best of a lot of these exchanges. Michael Johnson looked pretty good. He was landing, but man, Diego Ferreira's got some power on him,
Yeah, and I mean, he's
and
really not even known as a knockout guy. He's a submission
nah,
artist. So the shows, he's maybe later in his career, he's really well rounded out. He's always been a good striker, always had very sharp striking, but this was a big knockout. And for Michael Johnson, this is kind of just a story of career. Like, even when he looks good, he loses. Can just never seem to put it together. This guy kind of feel like he's unlucky in some cases. Has fought the toughest of the toughest guys. But yeah, I mean, this was tough to watch if you're a Michael Johnson fan because he was brutally slept. Beautiful right
yeah,
hand haymaker. No other way to say it. Haymaker.
yeah. Coming off three losses for Diego Ferreira, this was a must-win fight for him, and he did it. So.
Yeah, this was a big win for him after a layoff too. So he'll probably get a top 15 fight after this, which will be cool to see where he still fits into the division. Moving up on the card, the knockouts did not stop. Joaquin Buckley with a really nice finish over the tough Andre Fiallo, who maybe not so tough. He's been knocked out now 3 times in his last 3 fights. You never like to see that. Maybe the chin is starting to go. Buckley is a walking highlight reel. This guy has one of the most exciting viral knockouts in UFC history. Everyone knows him for that, but at this point now, he's had about 3 or 4 real highlight reel knockouts. So he's not a one-trick pony. He's not a one-fight wonder. He's a very dangerous UFC fighter, and this is his debut at 170. There's a lot of exciting fights for him at this weight class.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, this was Joaquin Buckley's debut at 170, and he looked like a welterweight to me. I questioned at least the last podcast how he'd look at this new weight division. He's a huge guy, but he looks like a solid welterweight. He says the weight cut wasn't bad. He looked impressive. I mean, Joaquin Buckley just like an all-around athlete. I mean, explosive, quick, powerful, and he's a super creative striker. Andre Fialho is a very good boxer, but Buckley just got the best of him. That he was a huge head kick.
Yeah, really nice head kick. And I'd like now that they're both at welterweight that they originally fought at middleweight, but that fight with Kevin Holland, I mean,
Yeah,
that could definitely if that headlined a fight night card, there'd be a lot of anticipation. They'd really build it well, they'd sell it well. They're both good on the mic. They're both, they both like to talk shit. They both got some antics, and we'll see what type of level Buckley's at. So I think that's definitely a fight that we can see down the line, and one I'd be really excited
yeah.
for.
I'm super excited to see what Buckley can do at 170 and how that fight would do at 170. I think honestly, I'd give a better chance to Buckley than those two at 185. I mean, two guys they've fought before, but Buckley looked real division.
Yeah, I mean, I guarantee if they fought this time, Buckley would be shooting for some takedowns and not wanting to strike with Kevin Holland because we saw how that went. Next fight on the card, in my opinion, what wasn't one of the best. It was a good fight, just one I didn't have a lot of anticipation for going in, especially with how high up on it was on the card. But Ludwig Godinez put on a really offensive performance, a really good performance against a tough fighter in Emily Ducote. She showed off striking, she showed off a little grappling, proving that she is, a tough girl, not going to get walked over. She's had some struggle when she steps up in competition, but overall, she's starting to really, find her way in the UFC and turn out to be a very good fighter. And as for Emily Ducote, a fighter who had some hype coming in from Bellator, she's now 0-2, granted against two tough opponents, but at this point, it's pretty clear she's not really going to make any noise as a contender or anything. So we'll see if she sticks around.
Yeah,
Yeah, not
pretty
much to say
much.
about this one. Still have no idea what was the third highest fight on the card. The co-main event though was a good one. Anthony Hernandez, the middleweight Marab. I see some people calling him because this guy just has an endless gas tank, shoots endless takedowns. He gassed out Edmund Shavazian. Just he chains things together. He'll jump on guillotines and then just use a guillotine to transition to the top. He's a great scrambler. He's kind of submission over position, which is dangerous, but he knows what he's doing. And I mean that gas tank, he probably could go 15 rounds and not get tired. It's incredible.
Yeah, Hernandez impressed me once again. He looked great on the ground. I mean, he was just doing whatever he wanted to Edmund Shabazian pretty much. In the third round, he had some, crazy dominant ground and pound. Edmund Shabazian gassing out once again, man. I
Yeah.
mean, is there ever a fight that this guy does not gas out? Um, he looked decent in the first round, but after that, Anthony Hernandez just kind of took over.
Yeah. Which, it kind of makes sense now why Hernandez was the favorite coming in, because I think that path to victory was definitely clear. There was a huge advantage, huge difference in the gas tank, and he got exhausted.
Yeah.
So Hernandez will take a fight in the top 15 next. We'll see how he fits in. Maybe he fights someone like a Brendan Allen, who I think does have a fight booked right now, or maybe not someone to that, because Allen's pretty much top 10 at this point. He could fight like the winner of Munez versus Craig. That would be a great grappling fight. There's a ton of good fights up there for Anthony
Yeah.
Hernandez, and he's an action-packed fighter. So no matter what fight he's in, it's gonna be exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the middleweight being kind of a top heavy division for a while. There's some guys coming up right now. You know, you talked about Muniz, Anthony Hernandez, Dolidze, even Duplessis, who's like, the hype's kind of still down a little bit on him, but it's still always got some guys coming up. Comes to Edmund Shabbat, you know, he came in so much hype around him, undefeated striker, got humbled, won again, then lost here. I mean, what do you think the ceiling is for Shabazian? Is it top 10 or is it top 15 or is it not even ranked?
Yeah, I mean he's still young, so I think he can definitely develop into a top 10, maybe even top 5 fighter, if he really puts in the work, works on his grappling because he's a talented striker, he has some good physical attributes, but the gas tank needs work. The striking is good, but still, could be improved, and the grappling needs a lot of work. But he's still young. He can make the changes, but I don't think we'll ever really see Edmund Shabazian fight for a title or really challenge for a title or be a champion like a lot of people were predicting him to be when he first came in and lit the UFC on fire.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is a guy that obviously has some talent, obviously can, is good technically and is a very good striker, but he just seems to underperform in the octagon. He might be a guy that will like look way better in the gym than he does in the octagon, and that might just be his fate. So,
Yeah, I definitely could see that. That's a good point. He's a
oh,
gym
by the way,
killer.
Anthony Hernandez, four straight.
Yeah, really
Yeah.
putting together a nice win streak. All right, so I mean, it's down to the main event, and honestly, this was a good main event. Mackenzie Dern put on probably the best performance in her career, in my opinion. Dominated Angela Hill. Angela Hill won one round, but that was it. Dern dominated on the grappling, as a lot of people expected. Couple 10-8 rounds on some judges' scorecards. She dropped Angela Hill on the feet, which is impressive because Dern obviously not a striker. She always has had thrown some heavy strikes. She was always kind of known to have some power for being someone known for jiu-jitsu, but shows it against the tough Angela Hill. She didn't get the finish, but nonetheless incredibly impressive coming off 2 losses. And even though she did have 2 losses, I mean, in both those fights, she had her moments. They were both, kind of close fights. The Marina Rodriguez fight a little less so, but she really had moments in those fights where she was so close to finishing and just didn't get the job done, and she ended up losing. And she came in there tonight. She was not going to accept the loss. She dominated Angela Hill, just a way better fighter, and she's someone who Mackenzie Dern will fight for the title one day. I'm pretty confident in that. She puts one, maybe two more wins together, and she's right there. And she's a threat for whoever she fights in that division. No girl will have an easy night out against Mackenzie Dern because of her level of grappling.
Yeah, I mean, she just looked better everywhere. Against Angela Hill, who's no slouch at all. I mean, Mackenzie Dern was the better striker. This was a great performance. And as you said, Dern's a future title contender, maybe future champion. Um, she's, I mean, she was very well rounded this fight. Obviously, we know the grappling is going to be very good from her. And Divorce Dern is a new mythical fighter, I think.
Yeah. I mean, she looked good in there, like in all aspects. She was looking good. She was fighting good.
Yeah, I
And
mean, just you could just look at the strike differential. I mean, the 126 significant strikes to 66, 104 strikes to the head, um, 3 takedowns versus 0 takedowns, 1 knockdown, domination.
yeah, then the scorecards reflected that it was a lopsided fight. So I'm definitely excited to see what's next for Dern and Angela Hill. She'll continue just to kind of be the gatekeeper of that division. Not to be
Yeah.
disrespectful, that's just what it is. That's what she is. great. She has, I think, the most fights for a woman in the UFC. So doesn't get more respectable than that. A,
No,
a
I
true a
mean,
true veteran. Yeah.
yeah, me too.
All right, guys. So that pretty much wraps up the weekend. I don't know, Jeremy, you have anything else you want to add? Good UFC card in terms of the product. A lot of knockouts, which you always like to see. You always like to see fighters going out getting finished. Not too many boring fights, even divisions. Just not a lot of big name fighters, and a really controversial ending to the weekend with the Lomachenko versus Haney boxing fight. But it should not be understated what a fight that was. Such a back and forth war. I was hyped watching it, and yeah, a good weekend for sports. I enjoyed, sitting here breaking it down for you guys with my boy Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you for everybody for watching. We love doing this podcast.
Seriously, and we hope you guys like watching it. We'll be back later this week with another episode.